13th, 2013 be adopted as circulated. Moved by Councillor Carlick Pearson, seconded by Councillor Ashley. Any discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That motion is adopted. Next, for council, we have a number of sets of minutes here for adoption. The first one are the minutes of the special council meeting of April 15th, 2013. The recommendation is that they be adopted. Moved by Councillor Kinney, seconded by Councillor Ashley. Are there any errors or omissions? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Those minutes are adopted. Next are the minutes of the special council meeting of April 18th, 2013, and the recommendation is that they be adopted. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Garron. Is there any errors or omissions? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Those minutes are adopted. Next are the minutes of the special council meeting of April 22nd, 2013, and the recommendation is that they be adopted. Moved by Councillor Carlick Pearson, seconded by Councillor Ashley. Are there any errors or omissions? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Those minutes are also adopted. The fourth set of minutes are the minutes of the regular council meeting of April 22nd, 2013, and the recommendation is that they be adopted. Moved by Councillor Kinney, seconded by Councillor Ashley. Are there any errors or omissions? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Those minutes are adopted. Next are the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of April 22nd, 2013. The recommendation is that they be received. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Garron. Are there any errors or omissions? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Those are received. Next are the minutes of the special council meeting of April 29th, 2013. The recommendation is that they be adopted. Moved by Councillor Garron, seconded by Councillor Ashley. Once again, are there any errors or omissions? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Those minutes are adopted. The last set of minutes for consideration are the minutes of the special council meeting of April 29th, 2013. It's been recommended they be adopted. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Kinney. Are there any errors or omissions? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Those minutes are adopted. Next on the agenda, under petitions and delegations, is an opportunity for public comment on the stratification of the Inn on the Harbour, located at 720 First Avenue West. Is there anybody who wishes to come forward and provide a comment? I'll call again. Is there anybody who wishes to come forward and provide a comment? Okay, thank you. Nobody's come forward. If you note that in the minutes, we'll move on to the next item. And this is a report from the city planner. It's an application for a development variance permit at 1724 Atland Avenue. The recommendation is that the development variance permit number DP-13-08 for 1724 Atland Avenue proceed to public notification. Mr. Roden, for those watching at home, would you please outline the text of the report?
Certainly, Your Worship. On April 19th, we received an application for a development permit for 1724 Atland Avenue. Basically, they want to expand the porch entrance and the encroachment into the front property setback by 3 feet from the front property line. Zoning regulations for the building setback requires a front property line of 3.6 meters, so they're going to be out about 0.6 meters. Within the context of the neighborhood, a 3-foot encroachment will not pose a great disturbance to the visual landscape, according to the city planner who has gone up there and looked. There is no costs or budget impact to the city for granting or not granting the the development permit variation. And it is recommended by the city planner that it now proceed to public notification so that the community has an opportunity to comment on it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Kinney, seconded by Councillor Ashley, that the development variance permit application is stated for the address as stated. Proceed to public notification. Discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That motion is adopted. Mr. Roden.
Unfortunately, Your Worship, we've just been advised that the analog sound has again been dropped, and there's not much we can do at it at this end. Those who have digital will, of course, still be able to hear. And so, as I said the last time, this is an opportunity to go out there and make the switch.
Well, it's an off night. Mr. Golden won't be speaking, so therefore people won't miss anything. Yes?
The last time this happened, I forgot to also mention that it's also streaming live on the internet, and people can always look at it afterwards. So just
That's
people
true.
might not remember that.
Right. Available on Skype. Thank you. We just did mention that it's available on Skype. Cue cards. Inventive, anyway. The next item is a report from the engineering coordinator and concerns an encroachment agreement at 501 McBride Street. It comes with a recommendation that the city enters into an encroachment agreement with the new owner of 501 McBride Street. Mr. Roden.
Thank you, Your Worship. What's happened here is that the new owner is going to get financing for this property, and as a condition of financing, he requires the city acknowledge an encroachment. The encroachment is quite minor. It's about 2.5 meters for wooden stairs on one side and 1.2 meters on another side for an awning. Staff have reviewed the situation. It doesn't interfere with the city sidewalk or any services or utilities underneath. The building is quite old, and the encroachment has been there for many years, and that's why it's coming to council now, is simply so that this individual can obtain his financing. The city will receive $100 for reviewing and processing this an agreement, and it's recommended that we should approve the encroachment agreement so that the individual can purchase 501 McBride.
Thank you. Councillor Garon.
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Seconded by Councillor Ashley. Is there any discussion? Councillor Ashley.
I was just going to clarify for myself. So basically the encroachments come onto city property, but it's not affecting anything that we need for the city. Is that correct?
Exactly. The Mr. Horn's Public Works crew has been out there and they've assured themselves that there's no underground utilities or any planned use of that area by the city, so it won't have any impact.
Further discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. The motion is adopted. Next is a report from the approving officer, and this is regarding the stratification of the Inn on the Harbor at 720 First Avenue West. The recommendation is that council approved the stratification as requested. Mr. Roden.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is the last step in a process that began, I believe, 2 council meetings ago when council received the first report, and it was explained to them that the owner of this property had built a condo on top and he wished to separate the condo from the rest of the building legally, and you do that by stratifying the building. The public was notified that they could make comment on it. That was to occur tonight earlier in this meeting. As you saw, or as we heard, there was no one who seemed to be particularly concerned about what was going on. And the recommendation from the planning officer is that the stratification be approved as requested.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Kinney, seconded by Councillor Carlick-Pearson. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That motion's adopted. Next is a report from the engineering coordinator again, and this concerns the Salmonberry Trading Company's Sunday market authorization. The recommendation is that council approve Salmonberry Trading Company's market at the courthouse and their request to change the time from Thursdays to Sundays. Mr. Roden.
Thank you, Your Worship. Salmonberry came back, approached us a while ago, and they were concerned that there wasn't that many cruise ships coming, and they wanted to move to a new time and a new location and try and create a more of a permanent market, which wasn't going to be just dependent on cruise ships. The head of the Salmonberry Trading Company came and made a presentation to council that night. We checked with the I was about to say Crown Lands, but it's federal Crown Lands, or provincial Crown Lands. The people at the courthouse, they have no problem with it. They provided an email saying that they're fine with the change, and so it's recommended that council approve the change.
Thank you. They were originally supported and allowed to operate because they were providing a venue for the cruise ships. And we'll get 9 cruise ships in the community this year. Will they still be available, or are they just going to Sundays only?
It's my understanding they'll still be available. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to, I think my understanding is that they're trying to become more like the farmers market and terrace, right, and have a bigger presence.
Right.
And
they are helping the community by being there as another venue on cruise ship nights,
right.
or in this case, it's going to be days and afternoons, not just evenings.
Yeah. My understanding is that they'll still be supporting that initiative.
Right. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Carlick-Pearson, seconded by Councillor Rice. Councillor Ashley.
Just had a question. When I was reading through this, it was talking about a letter of authorization that the engineering department gives to the market, and then it said that they had no problems as long as the proper setup and takedown procedures were followed. And I'm just wanting to make sure in that letter of authorization that those rules would be included.
They clean up after themselves and don't leave anything. And,
okay.
Right. And the city asks the same of them. Mr. Roden, it is going to be in the agreement?
It will be. Again, I haven't heard any complaints about the Salmonberry market before, so I suspect they're quite well run.
Right. Hopefully they have good weather. Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, no, and I wasn't trying to say that they hadn't been good stewards in the past. I just wanted to clarify what that letter of authorization was all about. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That motion's adopted. Next is a report from the engineering coordinator. This concerns the McBride Street mural, and it comes with the recommendation that council approve the McBride Street mural. Mr. Roden.
Thank you, Your Worship. This came to council at its last meeting. At that point in time, a number of questions was raised, including who owns the property anyways and why are we getting involved in it. I guess I'd like to apologize to everybody who likes art or is of Italian heritage for mispronouncing the Medici family and calling it the Medicis. But nonetheless, the Arts Council has said they don't mind if the mural is painted over. The Ministry of Highways, whose property it's on, says they have no problem with it either. And so having, checked those two things of, whose property it was and are the people who painting the original mural, are they okay with their mural being painted over, I suggest that council simply approve that a new mural be placed there.
Moved by Councillor Kenny, seconded by Councillor Garon. So what will the theme of the mural be this year? Or are we approving a surprise?
I believe that you want to approve a surprise, Your Worship.
All right. Thank you. Questions? Councillor Garon and Councillor Carlick-Pearson, please go ahead. And then Councillor Rice.
It's always interesting when we talk about art and what it is. Yeah, I guess we're approving a surprise. So I'd like to know what it looks like before it goes up, but I'm interested in a surprise too, I guess. Hopefully we all like the surprise. So I'm sure we will, but
Councillor Carlick-Pearson.
I think that we had an initial question that we had was whose responsibility it was for the upkeep. That was something that was discussed.
The city's agreement with highways is that we have to do minor maintenance, so presumably, eventually, much like we would have had to, the existing mural, once the paint started chipping poorly off that, we would probably have had to paint that over. So when this happens, we would probably be in the same place, but hopefully there will be a budding young artist 20 years from now who will look at that mural and have a vision, and we'll see another surprise for Councillor Garon.
Yeah, that one that's been there has been there a number of years. Councillor Rice.
I just wanted to clarify. The first mural, so according to this, it was put forward by the Prince Rupert Arts Council?
That's what the report says, yes.
I just acknowledged someone came to me and was not in favor of the mural and gave me a whole history of the kids that did the mural and not to change it. But my thinking is that those kids are now grown up and adults and they're probably okay with their art being painted over. So if the Prince Rupert Arts Council was initially responsible, then I would be okay with them wanting to further it. So,
thank you. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That's approved. Next is a report from the Chief Financial Officer regarding the 2012 audited financial statements. It comes with a recommendation that Council by resolution accept the 2012 audited financial statements. Mr. Roden.
Thank you, Your Worship. We've purposely kept this report to 1.5 pages because when you get accountants talking about their progeny, they can go on forever. Basically, we wound up the year with a small surplus. Our position has improved somewhat from the previous year. There's a great amount of detail here. Finance staff will be happy to go through it in great detail with anyone who wants to arrange to make an appointment. Probably for most of us, it's Statement C, which is on page 3 of the statements, but page 72 of this report, which shows the page 69, which basically shows the operating results for the 4 funds that the city manages its accounts, the water fund, the general fund, the sewer fund, and the solid waste fund. And with the exception of the solid waste fund, they all had a small surplus relative to their funds, which is good news. One of the interesting things that we found out last year is that the Howe Institute determined that municipal financial statements were extremely hard to understand. They did a survey across Canada, and what they found that one of the problems is that the financial statements are prepared according to CICA handbook guidelines, and yet municipalities across the country develop their budgets on a cash basis. In other words, you can only spend money you're getting or you're borrowing, whereas that doesn't equate very well with a full-blown accrual accounting. So this year what we've done is we've added an additional Schedule 8 actually, not Schedules 8 and 9, but just Schedule 8, that shows our operating results based on the monthly financial reports that Council's been receiving for the last 6 years, and it shows how we did compared to our annual financial plan budget. So you can simply go down there and you can say, right, we budgeted $1,017,000 for ferry revenue, we came in at $1,020,000. And you can go all the way down and you can see all the revenues and all the expenditures as they were budgeted. So we hope that this will significantly improve the readability and understandability of our financial statements for your average person who doesn't have a designation in accounting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll ask Council's consideration of the recommendation. Councillor Ashley.
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Garon. Discussion? Further discussion? Councillor Ashley.
I just had one question, just might be my understanding or misunderstanding of leases. On page 62, in the report talks about leases payable, and it says that one lease was paid in full during the year. I'm wondering, was this a lease to own or something that we were doing? That's why I was curious.
Yes, what we the city arranges leases through the Municipal Finance Authority, and all the leases we arrange are purchased to own. You're correct.
Yeah, so we would have paid off a piece of equipment. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. The recommendation is adopted. We'll move down to resolutions from the closed council meeting. Mr. Roden, is there anything this evening?
Yes, there is, Your Worship. This evening, Council made a motion appointing Mr. Robert Long as their new city manager effective May 15th, pursuant to the community charter and the policies and procedures of the City of Prince Rupert.
Thank you. We'll move down to bylaws. The first bylaw for consideration is the 2013 5-year financial plan bylaw number 3331, 2013. Mr. Roden, if you'd like to outline the bylaw and its effect should it receive adoption.
Certainly, Your Worship. The first bylaw is the 2013 5-year financial plan bylaw. It's basically in two parts. The first part addresses all the information that has to be required in a bylaw pursuant to the community charter, so people who are reading it can actually see the sections of the community charter that are being responded to. It makes pretty good reading, particularly if you're not keen on just looking at a column of numbers. The second part of the bylaw identifies in quite detail what each department is. Basically, the bylaw is split into four pieces: the operating fund, and then the three utility funds. So the first column of numbers basically identifies the revenues from the operating department for the year. Council at the last meeting indicated that it wanted to see a 1.5% tax increase, which will generate about $170,000. Council also indicated that there would be an expenditure reduction that they were determining with CUPE Union of about of a minimum of 150, which is on the last page, but the appropriated surplus that's going to be pulled down this year to balance the budget is approximately $503,000. On the following page, we've identified a new line because management does not know at this time where these reductions are going to be coming from. But the line says expenditures identified by CUPE Union and approved by City Council, negative $150,000. So presumably the CUPE will be telling us where we can make some reductions. You'll see that pursuant to the community charter that the budget is balanced, and there will, according to budget, there will be no surplus and there will be no deficit on the operating fund. Moving over to the three utility funds, water, sewer, and solid waste, they all, there's going to be a bit of a surplus in the sewer fund. This year we're anticipating a small deficit in the water fund due to the amount of capital works that we're going to be doing. And again, in solid waste, we're assuming that we will once again rack up a small deficit of $206,000 due to capital expenditures that we need to do in solid waste. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. For people that are interested in this bylaw, which is number 3331, 2013, it does show the anticipated improvements to the recreation complex. It does show some of the projects here that are budgeted, whether it's water utility, sewer utility, solid waste. It also shows some street and road work. There's money allotted for bridge repairs and for paving, and a sewer extension. And it outlines really where the money is being budgeted, not only on the operating side, but for purchases and improvements. I recommend to Council that the bylaw be reconsidered and adopted. Councillor Thorkelson.
So move.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Kinney. Now, are there any questions?
I just have.
Please go ahead.
It's just on page 1 and page 2, and it's. I believe I'm sure I know what the answer is, but I just wanted to clarify it. And that is, it shows percentage of revenue, and that's just because that revenue is so small, it would have to be a decimal point where it shows a 0. And the same thing as percentage of tax revenue on page 2. It just shows a 0 because it's such a small amount that it's just because it would have to be a decimal point instead of a whole number. Is that why Mr. Roden is not shown that way?
Yeah, we basically rounded off to whole numbers, and so fractions thereof are fairly inconsequential.
Thank you, because somebody was asking about that, and that was my answer, but I wanted to make sure that I was accurate.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further questions? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That bylaw is adopted. Following that, we have the 2013 property tax bylaw, and that's number 3332, 2013. Mr. Roden, would you please outline the text of the 2013 property tax bylaw?
Certainly, Your Worship. As the Council at the last meeting directed staff to modify the property tax bylaw so that it would be a 1.5% tax increase, the bylaw was given 3 readings in that form, so it's back in front of you with the amendments actually in there. The 4th line indicates that this is a 1.5% property tax increase. The municipal levies have therefore gone down. As you know, and for people at home, the city does not set the levies for the regional district, the Skeena Queen Charlotte Regional Hospital, nor the Northwest Regional Hospital districts. Those are set by other taxing authorities, and it's the responsibility of the city to simply calculate the amount per $1,000. So if those have gone up from last year, and I know a few of them have, then you want to talk to your various regional bodies and about why those taxes went up. The city is only responsible for the municipal levy, and we're actually going to wind up with less tax revenue this year than we had last year. Thank you.
Thank you. As Council's consideration of the 2013 property tax bylaw needs to be reconsidered and adopted. Moved by Councillor Carlick-Pearson, seconded by Councillor Ashley. Are there any questions, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That bylaw is also adopted. We'll move on next to the report from the acting city manager on outstanding council initiatives. Mr. Roden, have you anything for us this evening?
I do not, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to reports, questions, and inquiries from members of council. Are there any this evening? Councillor Thorkelson.
Well, I think it's Mr. Roden's last evening with us. I think he said that he was going to see us through this most difficult budget, and we certainly appreciate his stick handling of us through this difficult budget. And I would like to say that it's been a pleasure to have Mr. Roden as our Chief Financial Officer. I appreciated his patience explaining things to me, and as he's had to do many, many times. And he's always always, and I want to thank you, Mr. Roden, because you've always made time. Anytime I've ever had to ask a question, you've always made time to answer, and many times it's been. I don't think I've ever made an appointment to see you. It's been I've just been able to drop in, and you've made time for me, and I want to thank you very much for that, because the financials of the city are exceedingly important. Probably the most important thing that we do is manage the money here, and I think that without a good financial person at the helm, we're in big trouble. And I do want to say that when I first started in 2005, before Mr. Roden was the chief financial officer, we did not have, I said this before, but I really want to let council know, we did not have monthly statements. They hadn't had monthly statements for years. No monthly statements. They had the council had no idea of how our finances were from month to month. And can you imagine that? I mean, that I found was a terrible way to run things. And then we had a short-term interim chief financial officer who came in and straightened the books up somewhat. And but just before Mr. Roden was hired, there was a terrible financial mistake that was made by that chief financial officer to the tune of $5 million. And if you can believe it, and so, but when Mr. Roden came, I have always felt confident, every year that the books were not only accurate, but that he was making them easier and easier for us to understand and for us to read. And so I want, on behalf of myself, Mr. Roden, to thank you very much. I think you've been an exemplary CFO, and I want to thank you very much and acknowledge all of the hard work that you've put in for myself and other councillors over the years. Thank you.
Councillor Ashley.
I just wanted to echo Councillor Thorkelson's remarks. You've had to go through a lot of the hard financial times, and you've helped us to make some really hard decisions, so thank you.
Okay. Councillor Carlick Pearson.
In the year and a half I've been here, I've learned a lot from you, so thank you, and it was good getting to know you as far as finances go. So thank you, and good luck with everything.
Anything further? Anything else? No? I'll read the mayor's report then. This is the time of year that the City of Prince Rupert Spring Cleanup is beginning. The free landfill tipping tokens can be used. They allow for the drop-off of up to 150 kilograms of residential solid waste, and these tokens are in your phone book on page 6, and they are valid from May 1st to June 15th. So if you're cleaning up your home or your yard, you're welcome to use this free landfill tipping token. The Prince Rupert Airport has reported that passenger figures during the month of March show an increase of over 5% compared to the number of passengers in March of 2012. I also participated in a community meeting regarding governance and setup and bylaws for the Western Transportation Advisory Council, of which the City of Prince Rupert is a board member, and the committee's work forms a basis for some required updates. I also participated at the National Aboriginal Business Opportunities Conference held here in Prince Rupert, and provided a greeting on behalf of city residents and city council, as well as providing closing comments. This is the third year of the event being hosted here, and it was sold out to capacity. The Metlakatla Development Corporation announced its plans to construct a retail, office, apartment, hotel, and restaurant combination 7-story building complex to be located on the old Empress apartment site, with self-contained parking. The building plans and a request for a rezoning will be submitted to the city in the near future. The Village of Lac Whillams also announced a joint venture company with the Lac Whillams Environmental Remediation Group Limited Partnership, which can facilitate and will specialize in landfill closures and priority site remediation projects, and also they announced a joint venture agreement with Britco Building Innovation to facilitate the sale and distribution of modular homes in this area. I've met with representatives of the BG Group who were in the city to review their Ridley Island site. They will be continuing their community consultation regarding their liquefied natural gas project, and the city residents will be hearing more about the project later this year. I attended the Western Transportation Advisory Council's business meeting and provided a presentation about Prince Rupert with an update on current and pending port-related projects and activity with the community. I participated in the British Columbia Mayor's Caucus biannual meeting. There were 70 mayors in attendance and a variety of local government topics were discussed. As priorities, the following will be acted upon. That's to support the Union of BC Municipalities' efforts to secure a long-term, predictable funding source to local governments for infrastructure projects, to request the provincial government extend the Small Communities Grant Program, to request a review of legislation that imposes wage settlements by binding arbitration. And there's a request that the provincial government establish a ministry dedicated to local government, and in the past there's been that. And there's a request that the Premier attend the Mayor's Roundtable on local government. Other topics discussed were changes to the funding program criteria to allow flexibility of funding for various community projects, more funding for core services projects. Revenue sharing programs were discussed. Currently, out of every dollar of taxes paid, the federal government gets 50 cents, the provincial government gets 42 cents, and that leaves the municipal governments with 8 cents. The cost of protective services was also mentioned. Also, the efforts of the federal and provincial governments, policy changes, and how it affects local governments. Further, another topic is downloading, and that is also a concern if done by federal or provincial governments, or if there are no provisions for support. And aging community infrastructure is the greatest concern, and how it can be continuously supported for an extended period. I also attended the Northwest Canada Cruise Association event. The West Coast cruise ship activity is increasing. This year, 2 more cruise ship companies are operating out of Vancouver, bringing another 20 to 30 cruise ship calls there. More cruise ship activity creates more itineraries and more cruise ship ports of call, as schedules can change year to year. This can create more opportunities for weekly visits to British Columbia and Alaska ports. Currently, Prince Rupert will see 9 cruise ships this year. I participated in the North Central Local Government Association annual general meeting held in Quesnel. Councillors Ashley and Kinney were also in attendance, and City Council had resolutions on the agenda which we spoke on behalf of, and they were adopted. We also met with representatives of the Canada Development Investment Corporation and reinstated our concerns for the sale of Ridley Terminals Incorporated. Further, we had meetings with representatives of the Northern Health Authority and reviewed some concerns for future hospital bed capacity, continuing recruitment of doctors and nurses, and concerns for future addictions services. I also talked with representatives of companies involved in local liquefied natural gas projects, and these companies will be holding open houses and making presentations in the city during this month. I attended the 50th anniversary celebration of the Prince Rupert Lions Club, which received its charter on May 2nd, 1963. Currently, the Prince Rupert Lions Club has 22 members, and they fundraise through a variety of events for Lions charities. You'll see them fundraising at Seafest, Oktoberfest, and at all the Prince Rupert homecomings. Their dedicated group volunteers to serve their community through service, and if they have the time and wish to volunteer, you're welcome to to join, particularly if you have time and you very, very much appreciate on an annual basis what goes on in the communities. And the membership is open to both ladies and to men. The Prince Rupert Airport has reported the passenger numbers for the period from January 1st to April 30th versus the same period last year. And for the 2013 months, there's been an increase of 5.8% in total numbers for those months by comparison this year to last year. I attended an appreciation ceremony at the District of Port Ed and witnessed His Worship Dave MacDonald being presented with Her Majesty the Queen's Jubilee Silver Anniversary Medal. The presentation was made by our Member of Parliament, Nathan Cullen, and on behalf of Prince Rupert residents and City Council, I provided a greeting and our best wishes. Councillor Jennifer Rice was also in attendance. And the City has received some donation money in support of the upcoming Snowbirds Air Show that is planned for later this year, and donations are very much appreciated in support of this national performance coming to Prince Rupert. If you would like to donate to the community event, you can do so through our City Hall and receive a tax receipt that is tax deductible on your annual tax return. And this is the last council meeting for the City's Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Dan Roden. Mr. Roden has provided 6 years of good service to the City and very valued advice to Prince Rupert City Council during his tenure. He's not only looked after the City's finances, but he's found efficiencies in finance and other areas of the City's business. Most recently, he's provided the City with his services as an acting City Manager and is our resident expert on ongoing issues with regard to Watson Island. And for all of that, Mr. Roden, on behalf of the community, you have our thanks, and I wish to thank you and wish yourself and Miss Leah Robinson all the best. I know you've got some travel planned. You also plan to continue living in the community, and I hope to see you at a variety of community events, and the odd word about finance is always appreciated. So particularly from myself, because I've had to work with you on a daily basis in the role that you've taken on as the acting city manager, and of course myself as the mayor, the chief executive officer of the corporation. And we've had many discussions, and I appreciate your insights and the information that you've picked up during your tenure and the changes that you've had to make. And if anybody thought last year's budget was a struggle, this year was infinitely harder. And you provided a variety of scenarios and a variety of timely advice, and it's always been well-meaning and for the best that the community could have. And the thing I appreciate in particular is that your advice is always balanced. And not everybody has that ability, but you have that insight from your financial background as well as being out in the community. Frequently on weekends I see you walking around, so I assume, like a lot of us, you're talking to people, and that helps to formulate opinions, that helps to provide a balanced point of view. So from myself personally, thank you for the last while. Appreciate it very much. That concludes the mayor's report. Mr. Roden.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's been an interesting ride, and I've always thought that working in the public sector was more than just a job. And I've tried to act in that way, that it's more than just a job, that you show up every day. It's something you have the public's money, and you're supposed to be defending the public's interest. And it's been a pleasure to work in Prince Rupert for 12 years, first 6 years as a secretary-treasurer of the school district, and then 6 years here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. If there's nothing further, I'll ask council for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Kenny, seconded by Councillor Carlick-Pearson. Discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. This meeting stands adjourned.